Urban explorers, what is the creepiest we are not alone experience or experiences you've had? So there's a moderately well-known abandoned mental hospital close to my town. A few months back a few friends and I went to explore a bit. Not a rare thing for people here. We found this setup of a few folding chairs and a couple of old mattresses with blankets and whatever else you'd imagine on them. We chilled there for about 10 minutes and then went on with our adventure upwards. Pretty uneventful from then on. A few really cool graffiti murals. Awesome view from the roof. When we were coming back down we passed through the room and all the chairs were folded up and neatly stacked against the wall and the beds were made. Or at least as close to that as it could have been. Whoever did it would most likely known that we were there and waited for us to leave to do all of that as it was only a time frame of about 45 minutes. No threats or anything, just an eerie feeling of being watching in an abandoned mental hospital. Edit. Kings Park Psychiatric Center. I replied to like 4 of y'all and got about 20 others asking LMAO. I should be thankful this is my creepiest story. So I was at an abandoned medical school in a pretty bad city with my friend. My friend told me homeless people squat there but only on the first floor. She even said one of her friends sat their backpack down and had it stolen by one of them in plain sight. So we avoided it and explored the second floor. We kept hearing random noises like someone loosely following us, so we kept on guard, but never saw anything. We were then in this room and heard a louder noise and look over to see a cat just chillin'. It was the cat following us all along course. After stopping to pet it and moving on, it continued following us making the noises we kept hearing. It eventually came right up to us to be pet. We assumed it was a stray and wanted to get it help, so we agreed that if it followed us out we'll take it somewhere or to someone who will care for it. It followed us outside then immediately ran from us when we were like lol welp guess we got a cat now. So I went to see where it went. Only to see one of the doors to the bando open and this like 6-foot+ dude walk out and yell at me all fucking with my cat. I just about shit myself thinking I was about to get murdered or something, haha. I was like, oh is that your cat? He followed us out. He's like, yeah it's my cat, Colonel Mustard. Get over here. And the cat comes running to him. He introduced himself and we talked for a bit. He was actually a really cool guy, said he lives there and studies psychology and stuff to keep occupied. So there's this building in my city that has been abandoned for over a decade. The building itself covers over 40 acres, so it's pretty well known by explorers that if the cops come they won't search for you inside, but wait for you to come out. The second time I went to explore this building we were looking for a way inside. Keep in mind this is taking place early in the morning, maybe 3 AM. We come across this section of the building that was a large outdoor amphitheater. We walked down to the center and went up to the boarded up windows, and ever so faintly on the other side of the wood you could hear someone talking to themselves. We got the fuck out of there. I explored part of an old Nike or Atlas missile site one night with a few friends. As we were leaving, someone started shining a laser pointer at us from the woods. Somehow, we couldn't actually see where they were, even though that's usually pretty easy to do with laser pointers. I still wonder if it was just a laser pointer and not a laser sight instead. The area I'm currently in is a touristy beach place, so being winter it's completely devoid of life. There's a lot of apartments/hotels around that are just shells, no windows or doors. At 2 AM I went to go to the local garage to grab some smokes as we were running low. It's dead quiet and you can hear the tiniest sounds. I was walking past one such building when I felt like I was being watched. I looked up and around, but I couldn't hear or see anything, so I carried on walking, but slow and now trying to be as quiet as possible while listening for anything strange. Suddenly every single dog around just went crazy barking, like dead silence to deafening barking in a second. Made me jump 10 feet, looked up and on the 3rd floor of her apartment that got no windows or doors put in yet is a single dog just staring at me. I literally turned around and walked straight back home and figured that I'd just go at a more reasonable time. I lived in China for the last 18 years. At night I would get bored and go out riding on my scooter and just explore various roads. This incident was about 14 years ago. There was a place I had been to in the daytime, down a country road that was mostly green hills and forest. Somewhere there was a little settlement where they were building a whole bunch of new things, including an apartment building that was at least 20 stories high. It was just a shell, no windows or doors or fittings yet, or even stairs, just the concrete for each of the floors and some of the walls. That night I rode past and stopped. There were bamboo ladders leading up to the first few floors, and more bamboo ladders inside going all the way up the building. The entire building was filled with people, and they were families too. Mom, dad, cooking pots. They had little fires going and were cooking. Children and even babies. There were hundreds of people living there, and as I stopped there with the engine running, more and more heads started appearing. People watching me. They were all silent. Nobody called out. They just looked. So I rode off again and felt spooked. My friends and I were exploring an abandoned restaurant in this beach town one winter night. We snuck in through a broken window on the short side to avoid being spotted by any cars driving by. Overall, inside it was your typical abandoned restaurant, but was still really cool to check out. There was a long bar, tables tossed about, etc. We walked downstairs into a wine cellar and started walking through the labyrinth of hallways. The basement was deceptively larger than we would have expected for a beachside restaurant. Anyway, we wander into this room off one of the hallways and shine our flashlight in the corner, and we see an unmade bed/cot with all of the trappings of someone currently living there, a safety razor next to the mirror, random other belongings. Our stomachs immediately dropped as we realized we were currently in someone's living quarters and promptly noped the fuck out of there. To this day we still don't know if the person was hiding in the basement with us, waiting for us to leave, or if we stumbled on it while they were out and about. Either way, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by someone from the shadows of that basement. So I take a lot of time lapses of nature and stuff. One clear night I decided to drive out to the middle of nowhere to get a time lapse of the stars. I found a lake that seemed like a cool spot to shoot and set up. About 20 minutes in I hear a noise and look up to see a light above me. Sure enough, a drone is right above me just hovering. It freaked me out, so I booked it out of there. I later learned I was trespassing on government property. I live in a big US West Coast city, in a neighborhood where most homes go right up to the sidewalk property line and have a yard and back. My place is the opposite, house is at the back of the lot. Front yard keeps me buffered from street noise. It's a nice, dark little oasis in the city. My house has a double door/split door, so the top can open independently of the bottom. I often leave the top open when the weather's nice. I'm sitting on the couch in the living room, all of 15 feet from the door. It's nighttime, I'm reading, and the door's more or less directly in front of me. The porch light's off, yard's dark, the only light's from the dimmed reading lamp I'm using. The wind keeps blowing the top part of the door open, closed, open, closed. I'm used to it, happens all the time, doesn't sound out of place. Until the door kind of misses a beat, I don't hear it thud closed. I look up, and it's perfectly still, only open 2 or 3 inches. It's one of those WTF are my eyes seeing moments. There's like a 15-mile-per-hour wind outside. How is the top part of the door partially open and perfectly still? Then my eyes or brain recognizes it, the outline of a hoodie, drawstrings, hood up. In that instant I'm frozen, and my heart is pounding. Someone is literally standing right there, hood up, holding my door open. I can't see his face, but he sees me noticing because he says, "You should keep your doors locked." Motherfucking what? Now my adrenaline kicks in. I jump up shouting. He bolts. I get the porch light on in time to see him running out the gate. I still wonder how long he'd been standing there, or WTF he was doing/thinking. The door has been very fucking locked since then. Not urban, but definitely rural. Was good friends with a guy whose property abutted a forest. He loved to go walking through the woods at all times of the day and night since he was a kid, and this part of the forest was the opening to a broader state park/preserve. Anyway, one day, he comes into work and is so excited to tell us he found a large 2-story cabin in the woods he had never seen before. So, it's been about 20-ish years of walking through that area since he was an early teen. He described it in great detail and was sure it was abandoned, even though there was still furniture in there. So, we, of course, were up for an adventure, and it would be neat to have a hangout that's off the grid. A week or so later, we head out with him. All of this time, he's been ridiculously excited about the place and says he has been to it a few more times, so he knows the best way to get there. After about an hour, he gets really depressive and confused, and he tells us that the house should be right in a clearing that we just walked into. And it was a massive clearing too, large enough for a house, at least. But there was no house at all. We walked outwards in circles for another few hours, thinking he got lost along the way, but nothing. He was completely upset by this, and he showed us marks he had made on trees that pointed to the clearing/house. By the time we got back to his house, he was almost in tears. Anyway, a few months later, he comes into work and says he saw the house again, and we ask him if we can go there. He says, "No, you don't want to do that," and is white as a sheet. That's the last thing he ever said about the house, no matter how many times we brought it up. I spent 2004 to 2009 living in a dilapidated warehouse that had a space over it converted into an apartment. In exploring the warehouse beneath it before moving in, a buddy of mine and I were discussing how the place smelled and was haunted. In making jokes about it, we started laughing when something shattered on the wall near us. We were seriously startled and contemplating what it could have been when someone shouts "shut the fuck up," and there's a homeless man throwing what I assume is a second bottle at us from across the space. In a non-threatening way, I calmly state, "Are you sure you should be in here?" He waves something at me and yells at me to call the police if I don't like it. We had finally worked up the courage to explore this super scary looking dilapidated house. It was boarded up really solid. Nobody was getting in and out without a ton of work prying off boards. We searched exhaustively. The easier way in was to just make the damaged drywall on the back wall a little more damaged to widen the hole. As soon as we stepped in, there was something vaguely human shaped at the top of the stairs we both saw. We bolted in terror. Of course, me and my friend were only 9 at the time. Was probably just some homeless dude better at finding entrances than us. As an adult now I really want to go urban exploring in the New York City subway's abandoned stations. But I need to meet someone familiar with all the new post 911 security shit, because I'm paranoid about it. An even more exciting target is the abandoned 19th Street Path station. The only even semi-modern footage is just blurs captured from passing trains, not any better than I can catch myself. But I think their security is tough. There's keypads at the tunnel, entrances presumably to disengage some security thing. There was an old house down the road from where we lived in the country. It was broken and falling apart, but as a kid, that was like the biggest draw for our curiosity. We decided to travel through the brush and go inside it on one of our bike rides, and we found loads of neat stuff. Magazines, old busted antique looking furniture. It was actually pretty cool. We knew from stories our dad told us about the house that there should have been a few nice apple trees around, so we wandered outside to go find them. But what we found was a new van hidden around a bushy area and covered with sticks. Remnants of a camp area with smoke still coming from the campfire, but no one that we could see. We noped out of there and told our parents. Turned out it was someone who had run the border and was camping out in the woods. No other details were relayed to us about it, but pretty creepy for our 12-year-old selves. There's an old flour mill on Harbor Island in Seattle. It's been abandoned and locked up for a while. My buddies went through a pretty serious urban X phase near the end of high school, so we were going to all sorts of weird and interesting places in the area just checking it out. Got chased out by cops a few times. Usual stuff. Anyway, inside this flour mill we are working through some of the regular block areas, and our buddy swears he heard something. We all stopped dead in our tracks, lights pointed down, just listening. The amount of noise a dilapidated building makes when you're trying to be quiet is amazing. Constant creaking and wind noises. Then I start to hear it. It was shuffling, with the sound of somebody dragging something across concrete. At this point I can feel my heart jumping out of my chest, the blood pulsing in my ears and head. I'm hyper aware as I try and pinpoint this sound and associate it with something I knew. By the time we are sure it's not just the wind, we've all heard the noises. There was 5 of us in there, and we are starting to think it's coming from near the stairs. We slowly, achingly, creep our way over broken glass and dirt. When we came up on the stairwell, we shined our lights down and up to the adjacent landings for the floor we were on, and couldn't see anything. My buddy turns around, steps on an old water bottle on the ground, making the loudest crackling a water bottle has ever made in the history of recyclables. One of my other friends, looking back down the factory area we came through, gets startled and yells fuck at the sound of the water bottle. We immediately heard the most chilling, deep scream. At that instant we all just put the gas on and ran the fuck out. At the bottom of the stairwells we ran into 10 homeless people who weren't there before, but we paid them no mind and didn't stop our dead sprint until we got back to our cars. We figured it must have been some homeless person we scared with our creeping around and then sudden expletive, but we never saw the person or identified the sound, so who knows. Thanks for watching the video, buddy. Subscribe for more high quality videos. Like and comment your favorite story.